So I'm going to share the exact phrases and expressions that you need to do things in English conversations, like when you want to interrupt someone or you want to change the topic. Maybe when you need to end a conversation, and lots of others as well. In fact, I'm sharing 50 useful phrases that will help you in English conversations. All useful expressions that you need to improve your speaking skills and to help you maintain conversations for longer. So, I hope you're ready. Let's get into it. Now, a lot can happen during a conversation. Talking about the topic is one important part, but to speak fluently and to speak with ease, you need to have a range of conversation tools up your sleeve because there are lots of other shifts and changes that happen during a conversation, depending on who you're talking to, what's going on around you, and whether or not you're interested. Right now, we're going to focus on the tools that you need to move around in your conversations easily and naturally. All right. And if you make it through to the very end of this video, I'm going to share some advanced expressions to help you talk about controversial topics, to help you express your ideas when you know that not everyone's going to agree with you and you want to prepare them for that. Now, if that sounds a little too intense for you, and maybe you want to start by focusing on simpler conversation strategies, about just starting a conversation with someone, then I recommend that you first watch this lesson up here. So, conversations are always two-way, right? That's what makes a conversation. So as you give your opinion or you share something, it's always nice to invite the other person's opinion, right? And this is a really important strategy to help you extend your conversations, asking for other people's opinions. So, what do you say when you're asking for other people's opinions? Well, quite simply, you could ask, "Do you agree?" Very basic. It's quite a closed question, so what about if you opened up that question to get a more interesting answer? What do you think about that? What's your opinion? Or, how do you feel about it? If you want to make it a little more polite, you might say, "I'd like to hear your thoughts on that." Or, "I'm interested to hear your opinion about this." And more formally, maybe if you were at a meeting at work, you might ask, "Would you like to add anything?" This is just, a nice sort of polite way of inviting other people into the conversation to share their opinions. So, what about what to say when you want to interrupt? When someone else is talking and you want to interrupt them, well, there are definitely ways to do it rudely, but of course there are many ways to do it politely as well. Sometimes you have to interrupt in conversations. So, of course, you could say, "Sorry." "Excuse me" is a little more polite, and then you can actually lead straight on with your different idea or your opinion there. "Sorry, I thought our meeting was on Thursday next week, not Wednesday." It's just a little brief interjection to help you share a different opinion or a different thought. Now, you can informally interrupt someone to add an idea to a conversation by saying, "Do you mind if I add to that?" Or, "Can I jump in here?" That literally means, "Can I jump into the conversation right now at this point? I've got something to share. I want to say it." Now, there are some more polite ways to express this as well. You might say, "Sorry to interrupt, but I've got something to say." Or, "Sorry for interrupting." Now, there's not a lot of difference between those two. I would just say that "sorry to interrupt" is probably used more when you're speaking directly to the person that you're interrupting. Then, maybe if you're stepping into a room full of people talking, a meeting room or something like that, you might say, "Sorry for interrupting, I just needed to share something with you." Now, to go even more formal than that, perhaps if you're working in a hotel and you need to interrupt a customer, you might say, "Sorry, may I interrupt you for just a moment?" Or, "If I may interrupt you for a minute, I'd like to share something with you." Okay, where was I? That was a good example of what to say when you've gone off topic. If you go off topic, it means that you started talking about something, so, for example, apples, but while you were talking, you started to talk about something else. You know, maybe you got distracted or you got excited and went off telling a different story, or even the other person that you're talking to has gone off topic, and you're thinking, how on earth did we end up talking about potatoes? You've got to get your conversation back on track, right? And it really is just that simple shift in the conversation. So, here's how to do it. So anyway, getting back to my story, as I was saying, where was I? Ah, yes. You can also combine some of these expressions together. So, anyway, where were we? Ah, yes. You were talking about apples. What to say when you think you understood but you need to double check. These are really important expressions to learn to help you as you're listening, so that you can feel more confident about your answers, when you're answering someone else's question. This is just a little check to make sure you're answering it accurately. So, if you didn't quite hear perfectly, you could say, "So, what you're asking is," and then repeat back what you heard. So, what you want to know is, and then repeat. Do you mean, and then paraphrase what you heard. Or you could say, in other words, what you're saying is, and this is a really natural part of conversation. Native speakers are not going to care if you ask them to confirm what they said, because it just makes it much easier to continue the conversation, right? If you're working in customer service, maybe at a hotel or at a restaurant or something like that, then using the verb confirm is a little more formal. You might say, "I'd like to confirm what you said," or, "Excuse me, can I just confirm that what you said?" Naturally, we agree and we disagree with people all of the time, right? And there are so many different ways to do this in English. Agreeing is pretty simple, right? You can just say, "Yes, absolutely," to say that you agree. "I completely agree with you." And we have this really fantastic expression, which is, "I couldn't agree more." I couldn't possibly agree more. I really strongly agree with you. But what to say to somewhat disagree? Now, all of these examples are ways to say that you accept some of the ideas that the other person has shared, but you don't completely agree with them. Okay, so you might say, "I see what you mean, but," and then express, a different opinion. "I understand your point of view, but," "I can see where you're coming from, but," "I agree with you up to a point, however," "I've got a different opinion." So, then what to say when you disagree completely? "I don't feel the same way." "Actually, I don't quite agree," or "I disagree." "I'm afraid I don't agree with you on that, or about that." Now, this is quite an interesting English expression. "I'm afraid." We use it when we're trying to make a statement more polite, not just to say that we're worried or we're scared. I'm afraid I can't help you. I'm afraid we've run out of sausages. So it's just a way of making those statements a little more polite, and you can do the same thing when you're disagreeing. I'm afraid I don't agree with you. So, to be quite formal when you disagree, then try to add a word like respectfully. Respectfully, I have to disagree. And then, if you feel like your conversation isn't going anywhere, maybe there's a bit of tension, people are getting frustrated and annoyed, and you want to change the topic. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree then. It's a way to end the discussion, especially when it's getting a little heated, and change the topic a little. Now, of course, in English, you can be quite rude with your body language when you're disagreeing with someone. So, in formal situations or when you want to be really polite, try to be aware of what your body is doing. So, avoid shaking your head or rolling your eyes or sighing, unless you really want that other person to see that you're frustrated or you're annoyed with them. Speaking of changing the topic, what do you say when you want to do that in English? What to say to change the topic? Now, this is useful. You might want to change the topic for a few different reasons. It could be as simple as you've run out of things to say about the topic. So, instead of ending the conversation, you can simply change the topic and change direction. That reminds me. Or, speaking about. Or, speaking of that. This is a really useful expression or a way of, kind of linking two ideas in a conversation. Speaking about your holiday to Greece, did I tell you that I've got a trip planned later in the year? But maybe you just want to introduce something completely different. So then you could try, "Oh, by the way, did I tell you about this?" Or, "Oh, while I remember." Or, "Before I forget, I've got something I want to say." This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I've got to share it anyway. I know this is completely changing the topic, but I've got to tell you. So, what to say when you're talking about a controversial topic? Now, this is more advanced conversation skills, but maybe you want to talk about politics, religion, social issues. I quite enjoy learning about these topics and having discussions about these things, but I know that my views will not always be the same as everyone else's. But that doesn't mean that you need to avoid it, right? You just need a few tools and a few tips to help you keep the conversation open and positive. So, when you're introducing an idea that you feel like not everyone's going to agree with, then you could try saying, "I know not everyone agrees with me, but this is what I think." Or, "I know this is a contentious issue," and then go on to explain. It might be an unpopular opinion, but I strongly believe I don't see eye to eye with everyone on this matter, but I think it's really important to discuss this. Whilst you may not agree with my views, I'm definitely interested in hearing yours. I'm not trying to ruffle anyone's feathers here. This is a fun little idiom to say. I'm not trying to make anyone upset or angry, I'm just sharing a different opinion. I'm not intending to ruffle anyone's feathers. What to say when you want to end a conversation? Having one of these simple expressions on hand will help you to politely end a conversation and move on. Right. We don't want to get stuck in a conversation. Well, I'd best be off. It's been great chatting. Anyway, I'd better get back to it. Or, I better get back to work. I'm so glad I ran into you. It's been great catching up. I'll see you soon. So, there you have it. That was over 50 common phrases to help you have more advanced English conversations and help you to maintain those conversations even longer. Now, all of these tools are ones that native English speakers use all the time in conversations. So, listen out for them in movies and podcasts. Try to hear them in context. Now, definitely don't try and learn all of them at once. Okay? Not all 50 phrases at once, but definitely choose a couple of them from each category and really start to get familiar with them and how to use them. You guys know that you can catch me over on Instagram and on Facebook, and make sure you take a look at the Ladies Project too. I've linked to it up here. You can catch the Ladies Project on Instagram as well. And as always, you can keep practicing with me right now, right there in that lesson. Lesson number 2. Do you feel frustrated when you get stuck in English conversations? You want to keep your conversation going, but you don't know what to say. Or maybe you freeze because you don't understand them. You completely forget your words. You don't know what to say, or they don't understand you. I'm Connor, creator of 24/7 English, where I help millions of English learners around the world develop confidence and fluency in English. Today, I have 30 awesome phrases to help you get unstuck during English conversations so you know what to say and can keep your conversation going. I've also made you a free PDF workbook with all of these useful common English expressions, plus a quiz to help you make sure that you can use them accurately when you speak. The link to download it is in the description below. You'll need to add your name and your email address so that I can send it to you. You can also join my weekly newsletter so you never miss a lesson or a free PDF. Every confident English speaker, whether they're native or non-native, uses the phrases and strategies that I'm going to share today to help them communicate. Native speakers use these phrases all the time because it's a really natural part of communicating. We don't always know what to say, and it doesn't always come out perfectly. Sometimes native speakers don't explain themselves clearly, and we have to use the expressions and phrases in this video to react and to keep our conversations going. But the difference is that native speakers or proficient speakers are more likely to be confident English speakers. They just know how to quickly get themselves out of trouble if they need to. If they get stuck during a conversation, they know how to fix it without panicking too much. And this is the main difference between you and them. You just need to know what to say in those situations to get yourself unstuck. And there are plenty of phrases and expressions to help you in those situations. Imagine that you've just run into someone that you know, perhaps a colleague or a professor at your university, and you've just started chatting in English. Things are going well, but suddenly you don't understand what they're saying. They've used a couple of words that you don't recognize. Or perhaps it could be because their accent's not one that you're familiar with. So, in these situations, you could say, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat that?" Maybe you just didn't quite understand what they said because they were speaking so fast. In this case, you can ask, "Could you say that again, a little more slowly?" "Sorry, I'm not following you." We use this when we don't understand what someone means. When the meaning is a little bit unclear, if you're a little bit confused, then you can use it. I don't think I understood clearly. Could you say that again? Okay, so studying and memorizing these phrases is step one. But to make them your own, to make them part of your own active vocabulary, you need to practice putting them into use, using them in different situations, with different people, in different contexts. You know that I'm a huge supporter of Hey Lady, an online speaking community for women learning English. Inside Hey Lady, you can join daily conversations and regular workshops to develop your conversation skills. And any eligible 24/7 English student is able to join with a 50% discount off their first month. Click the link down in the description to join Hey Lady and use the code MMM50H. Here's a new situation. You're talking with someone, but suddenly you forget your own words. It's like every English word in your head just disappears all of a sudden, or you forget what you're talking about after you've already started talking. This is the worst because the other person that you're talking to is looking at you, waiting for you to continue. Their full focus is on you, and you've lost your words. This happens to everyone, native speakers too. So, what can you say when you forget your words? What's that word? It's on the tip of my tongue. We use this idiom to describe that very familiar feeling when the word is so close. It's so close in your mind. It's right here, but you just can't get it. So frustrating. I'm sorry, I had a mental blank. I can't remember the word in English. At this point, the person that you're talking to will probably help you to remember or remind you of the word that you're looking for. You could even say, I forgot the English word. Do you know what I mean? Even if you can't find the word, don't let it stop you. Say something like, never mind, and change the topic. Tell me about the new project you're working on. Never mind, it might come back in a minute. This will help you to change the topic and keep moving forward in your conversation. You don't need to get stuck. Sometimes it's not just a word that you've forgotten, but you completely forget what you were talking about altogether. When this happens to me, I just say, hang on, let me start over. Let me try that again. Oh, I completely lost my train of thought. Hopefully, it'll come back to me in a moment. You have the choice to feel embarrassed and get frustrated with yourself, or you have the choice to just hit that reset button. You just need to signal what happened to the person that you're talking to so they know what's happening. But then the conversation can keep going. Listen to what I say, but also how I say it. Notice that I'm not taking myself too seriously. I'm using facial expressions just as much as the words that I'm choosing to help communicate what's happening. And this is a really important point. Honesty is really important in conversation. If someone is listening to you speak, and then, for some reason, you get stuck, all of those expressions that we just went through will help you to explain what happened and give some clues to the person listening so that they can help you out. And let's be honest, it's going to happen to you a lot on your journey to English fluency. And once you're fluent, it's still going to happen. Fluency does not mean perfect. It just means that you have all of the phrases and expressions that you need to have successful conversations in English, even when you mess up. There are plenty of times when you just don't know what to say, maybe because you're not properly prepared. Maybe you've never talked about this topic before, so you have no idea what to say or how to contribute. Or you might need a little bit of extra time to think about your answer. It's not something that you know instantly. And there are tons of things that we say in English when this happens. To be honest, I'm not really familiar with the political situation in Venezuela. If you need a little more time to think about your answer, then try. That's an interesting question. Let me think for a moment. That's tricky. I've never been asked that before. I'm not sure. Give me a second to think about it. Just give me a second to think about how to explain it in English. All of these phrases will give you some extra time, just a few seconds, so that you can take a deep breath, get your thoughts in order, and think about what you're going to say next. If you're in a group conversation, you can even direct that question towards someone else. I need some time to think about my answer. Does anyone else want to jump in? Another really common situation, especially at work, is when someone asks you to share your opinion or your ideas about something, but they catch you off guard. You don't have anything to share with them yet. If you don't know what to say in these moments, you might freeze. You might start searching for words, and it feels like every word has escaped your head. You've got nothing to share. So, in this situation, you can try to return the question back to them. I've never thought about that before. What about you? Oh gosh, I've never been asked that before. What do you think? Or even more casually, what's your take? This does two things. One, the other person will start talking, so you'll have some extra time to think about your answer. 2, if you don't really have an opinion or an idea to share about this topic, you'll probably get some ideas from what the other person is saying. They might inspire you to think of something to share or say. Or maybe you agree or disagree with something they said, but it's a way for you to keep the conversation going. What if someone asks you something that you're not entirely comfortable with? This can happen in a lot of different situations, and it's okay to not answer a question or not talk about a topic if you don't want to. So, I've got a few phrases to help you explain that you'd prefer not to answer and want to change the topic. I'd rather not answer that, if that's okay, for personal reasons. Is it okay if we talk about something else? What are you doing this weekend? What if the other person doesn't seem to understand you? You might find yourself in a situation where you're talking, but you notice the other person's face changing. They don't seem to understand you. That's okay. It might be your fault. Maybe you weren't being clear. But it could also be them. Maybe they got distracted or weren't paying attention. So, if you feel like this is happening, you could say, "Am I making sense? Are you following?" Remember, we used the word following earlier in this lesson. I'm not following you. So, it's a good one to use in the context of a conversation. Are you following me? Both of these questions are used to check in and allow the person you're talking to ask a question if they need to. If you're really confident that they are not following, you could say something like, "I don't think I'm being very clear. Let me try that again." Handling miscommunication. Sometimes, despite all of our best efforts, miscommunication happens. They haven't understood you, but it's totally normal. We just need to be prepared to handle those situations when they come up. So you can say, "Sorry, I think there was a misunderstanding. What I meant to say was..." This allows you to rephrase your ideas in a different way to help the other person understand. You could also say, I don't think I explained myself clearly, or I think you misunderstood. But be careful. The last phrase puts the blame on the person you're talking to. It's quite rude to tell someone they misunderstood you. It makes it sound like it's their fault, not yours. So, only use it if you're really confident they were the one who misunderstood. Notice how in the first sentence we use the passive voice, there was a misunderstanding. This way, I'm not specifically saying who was responsible for the problem, and that's usually the best way to go. You either assume it was you, apologize, and quickly fix it, or generalize, there was a problem here. Final thoughts. Now you have 30 useful expressions to help you when you're stuck in English and need help keeping your conversation going. If you enjoyed this lesson, make sure you give it a like and leave me a comment down below. I love to hear from you. I suggest that you take all of these phrases and practice using them in real conversations. If you're eligible to join the Hey Lady community, use the link in the description below and the discount code that will get you 50% off your first month of membership. Want to keep practicing? You know where to find me. See you in there.